Yeah, welcome. So I have to excuse myself before we start because I was told not to walk that much, and I'm normally always very active when I'm presenting. So I try not to go into that direction. So welcome to our talk. My name is Menzinger. I'm in the Salesforce ecosystem since over 8 years now, and I have different hats in my career. So I started with an ISV partner. I've been on the customer side. I was been freelancing, and now I'm a Salesforce architect at Copado. And so I'm co-leading the Salesforce developer group with this gentleman here in the front row, Sandor, in Munich, Germany, where we're also based. And I'm also a Salesforce MVP alumni. And with me is Matthias, and you can introduce yourself.
My name is Matthias Rolke. I'm also from Munich, and I love open source tools. I'm in the Salesforce ecosystem for around 10 or 11 years now, and I live on the terminal, as you will see later.
So, our talk is about metadata, because we have both some, interesting challenges faced out throughout our career, and so we want to share some insights, some real-world experience that we faced off, and of course, we want to give you some ideas about what's about metadata. Yeah.
But hold on, can we just do a recap of some news? Because I think there are some things worth to mention. Don't know if anyone of you experienced the same, but recently, deployments were really slow, scratch-or creation, and even packaging. It was so slow. But why is this related to metadata?
I mean, deployments obviously something has to do something with metadata. But any one of you did recognize that there was an insane performance degradation, and what this tweet is all about says this will happen on every release. What? So obviously, I don't know. There's something going on which is maybe not that good in terms of metadata.
Yeah. But not everything was bad. So with the summer 22 release, there is some new features around the bulk management of Picklist values. And why I love this change, you will see later.
I mean, Picklist values, obviously that's metadata. And so we get some new things also in the GUI, which is nice.
Yeah.
And some other great news.
Yeah, so didn't happen yet, but it was announced that permission sets will get the same love in the future as profiles. Woo! Like, for example, when you create a new custom field, and Fabien, thanks for your post. So thanks for your tweet. When you add a new custom field, you will be able to choose which permission sets you want to add this permission to. So that's really great.
This is awesome.
Long
and
way.
What about this one here?
Yeah, quick tip, because maybe in the past few weeks you had the same question or challenge, like how do I find out which Salesforce release my current org is running on? Because you might deal with 20 orgs, whatever, so you might deal with many orgs. How do you find out? Do you know?
Yeah, I mean, I had the same challenge, especially in the pre-release state, right, a couple of weeks ago before the major release. Is my sandbox already in the new one or old one? So how can I find out? And there's this awesome knowledge article, and that says, here, you can generate an enterprise whistle file and inspect the value, or you can also create an Apex class, just, because we all love to create Apex classes, and then you can see the API version. And this is an official knowledge article, and Matthias found out something really cool.
Yeah, it can be so easy, right? So if you just append /services/data to your instance URL, you don't even have to be logged in. You will get presented this nice looking XML, and if you scroll down to the bottom, you will see the latest release, name, and API version. So
and I don't know, Philip, are you aware about this? Okay. Because we didn't find a documentation for that, and I was thinking, hey, Matthias, you're awesome. How did you find out this one? Because it's so easy, and so we thought it's value to share this tip here, because, I mean, this here looks a little bit like metadata, and so actually we should go back to our topic.
Yeah.
So, and we would like to be, of course, interested in our audience. So who of you would themselves call as a developer? I mean, we know there are no such kind of Salesforce developers when you have been in the talk before, but who of you would be kind of saying, okay, I'm more on the development side of Salesforce? So please raise your hands.
Okay.
Okay, that's the majority. And so,
where are the admins?
Yeah.
5, 6.
Yes, okay. Let's phrase it differently. Who of you modifies Salesforce metadata? It should be everyone, hands up, even it is early morning, but because we are all developers, we are all at least metadata developers, because this is what Salesforce is all built about.
Yeah, that's right.
Let's have a look at a simple metadata example, because maybe not every one of you have seen metadata so far, so let's a quick one, just to get a small taste of that.
Yeah, so what is metadata? A list view, for example, is metadata, and you can see that I have an account all list view, which has like just selected one column, and I can modify or customize this list view by selecting more fields or adding a list filter. So this whole UI is around customizing this metadata. Now, I want to retrieve or download this list view so that I can work on it. So how do I do that? I've connected this org to my VS Code, and there is this tool called Org Explorer, Org Browser, and so I search for list view.
Yeah, I think because list view is a metadata, right? So it must be list view here, right, somewhere.
Where is it? There's no. So you at least need to know like the basics of metadata, like that a list view is basically contained in a custom object.
Oh yeah, I remember that one.
So I could go to the custom object account, and maybe here I can find the list view. No, there's all custom fields listed, but no list view. But okay, so let's download just the whole custom object and see if I can. Just this one, not all custom objects.
Only this one, just the account. But yeah, so obviously there is some, we have some GUI, so standard VS Code connections. I think this is all really basic. You can find out how to do that. And so if you want to start working with metadata, I mean, this is the most easiest way. Go to the org browser and inspect things. And yeah, you have to know list view is part of custom object, in this GUI at least. And here we go.
Yeah, so now I can really see my list view. It's already decomposed, so it's placed in a separate file, in a folder.
What decompose? What's that?
It's a new feature from Salesforce DX, which basically splits up your whole big custom object file with 10,000 of lines into separate files to make it
okay, this is all about the
readable.
Source format, right? So
exactly.
we talk about source format. And I think source format, that's maybe worth on a known topic, on a known talk, because there are so many more to tell you about. But so just to keep it simple, okay, so we have metadata in the org. We can bring it down to your local file system by using standard tools like VS Code.
Yeah, so we have the XML. We see that we only have like one column, account name, no more filters. Or just
nice. Okay, so I think we all have seen this. I think you already have an idea about metadata. So
yeah, let's just see how that changes or how that also can look like. I will add some more fields.
Yeah, well, we need a mic for you. Hold on a second. So,
but this is better for the recordings. So I might have missed this because I was writing some notes on some other stuff that you were saying. With the second panel on the right, is that a particular application that you're using, or is that something that I've missed in Salesforce?
This is VS Code, which is the kind of official IDE for Salesforce. Cool. So when you start saying, okay, I want to work with Salesforce DX or development, so this is where you all find all good documentation. So VS Code is the tool, and we have some plugins, extensions connecting to Salesforce, and this is pretty standard. So
yeah, and there's an article on Salesforce Ben about VS Code because I actually wrote it, which is amusing because I didn't spot it up there. But anyway, thank you.
Welcome.
Yeah, but sorry we didn't mention that this is VS Code. So let me continue. So I will just add some more fields to be displayed, and now I can even like hit the right click to retrieve only this list view again, and you will see the more columns being added. So that it was just all. Like we have a UI and we have like the XML representation.
So we are all metadata developers, but you can use different tools. And so whenever you do something in Salesforce, you're changing metadata. So this is the important message here. And so I think it's worth to jump a little bit deeper into some basics of metadata. So what is metadata? And probably you have read this definition somewhere on the web. Metadata is data about data. But I don't like this in the Salesforce system because what is it, data about data? Yeah, okay, describing data, but in Salesforce it's much more. Because in Salesforce it's not only describing, it's everything, right? So you can modify the visualization, your page layouts, your list views, your configuration, your settings. Everything what you do is actually driven by Salesforce metadata. And therefore, just to be clear, what is not metadata is actually Salesforce records. This is your data, but all the rest you can consider as metadata in Salesforce.
Yeah. Some more important terminology. So a metadata type is basically a classification of metadata. Example, custom object, list view, Apex class. And a metadata component is an instance of that type, a specific Apex class or a specific custom field.
And so I have a question. What do you think? How many different metadata types does Salesforce currently have? So please raise your hand just quickly. So round about 50. Who is for 50? Okay, 250. 250. Yeah, 250. 1, 2, 3, 4. 550. Okay. 750? 750? Okay. So the question is, how do we count? And there is something called
the metadata coverage report, and according to that,
and this is hold on. So this is the coverage report of metadata. So this is kind of what Salesforce says. These are the metadata we can work with, but not all of them, right? Even not all of them was there because there's a column, the first one, metadata API.
Yeah, so that basically means like we can retrieve and deploy this metadata and customize it.
Okay, but I see some missing checks here. So what about here? So metadata API, that means if I am not able to describe the metadata through metadata API, I can basically not use it in terms of from tooling perspective, in terms from developer perspective. And if you see, okay, there are some gaps, you see there is some white space, but this are approximately like 50 types, right? So that still means we have 500 types that we can work with. How can you memorize 500 types to work with?
I can't, and that's why this coverage report is so good for us. So
yes, so that brings us all metadata from A to Z, right?
Yeah.
No, it's A to W.
Sorry.
Yeah. So just in case, Philippe, you need some fancy names, yeah? So we don't have X, Y, Z. So maybe we should introduce some metadata just to make it a complete list, right?
That would be cool. Yeah.
Would be just easier for us. Okay, so we have some other check marks here. So the one thing is about the second one here, source tracking. Okay, source tracking, all about, like source-tracked environments, source-tracked sandboxes, scratchbox. A topic of its own, so we can jump into source tracking on another talk maybe. And then we have like packaging. And this is important because like source tracking and metadata API, there have been a lot of gaps at the beginning, but nowadays there are really, really rare gaps. So that means that most of all the things we can do through metadata API can be used for source tracking, which makes development much easier for us because we can just modify things more easily when we pull on the changes, what we have done in an org. And you should know about packaging. If you're going to use a package, you should know about not all of these metadata, not even half of them, which are supported by development tooling, are supported by packaging. Okay, so if you plan to be an ISV and package some stuff, you should be aware that you cannot package all metadata, and this is why this report is so great. And also, Apex metadata API, very limited, but sometimes useful. So you can use Apex to modify metadata. For instance, in a post-install script, when you have a managed package, update Picklist values, for instance, which is a nice use case. Anything else?
I think that's okay for now.
Okay, and so to be fair, even there are like 500 types we deal with, I would say only 40 of them give you real headaches. Okay, so it's not that bad. So
profiles, record types.
Maybe. Okay, let's go back to slides. Here we go. Okay, so we have seen there are a lot of different metadata, but maybe we can kind of group them, kind of metadata. So what do you think? What is the official kind of categorization?
Well, I found a Trailhead module which has a categorization, and this speaks of three types. It's simple, compound, and complex.
Okay.
And what does it mean? Simple is basically represented in a single file, so typically an XML file, such as this custom tab or even flows, permission sets, just one simple file.
So here you all see on the right-hand side, you see the content of the metadata, and here's the name, like broken tab. So this is a tab. So this is a tab in XML. So what's the next category?
We have compound. It's represented in two files, like the content on the left-hand side and the meta file on the right-hand side, capturing the API version or the status of
Okay,
this
so Apex class here, right?
Yeah,
I
the
see
code,
here.
basically. Other examples.
Okay,
Apex
here's the
pages.
code. Here's the beauty, and here is the nasty XML.
Yeah.
So, okay. So complex.
Complex, yeah. Means that it contains multiple named components. For example, the custom object asset.
You said name component. What name components?
It has like an API name, so it's fully addressable, the children. So a custom field has an API name. It's basically account.vet or whatever.
So it's like a reference. So you have in the metadata, you reference another metadata type.
Exactly.
Okay.
And one special thing regarding my examples here, a custom object can have its own properties. So we see broker the object method has properties and it has children like fields, list views, compact layouts. But on the other hand, like custom labels just has children. It doesn't have any own properties.
Okay, so I mean this is the official categorization, but in my opinion there are some more kind of things you should be aware in terms of how would you compare metadata. So we have a profile over here. Well, how would you say a profile? What is that?
Well, first I think it is a single file.
Yes.
It is just XML, but it is so weird in its behavior, and it contains like context-specific stuff of other metadata. So yeah, let's call it.
It's simple but complicated, right? So one file, special behavior. Okay, profile is one of them. Okay, we have another one here. What about, I did a lot of, component development, Aura components, LWC components.
Aura, yeah. So basically we have a folder for one component containing multiple other files like CSS, JavaScript, and so on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They call it bundle internally anyway.
Exactly, so let's just call it bundles.
Bundles. Another one is experience bundle, which is also kind of a bundle thing. Okay, here we are now. Oh, well, what's this here? Unfiled $public. What is this one?
Yeah, so we see an email template, and this can be placed in a folder which we can create. So this is a standard folder, but we can create other folders.
Okay, these are folder-based metadata. But any one of you know unfiled $public? Where does this came from? I mean, I don't know why. Yeah, any guess?
It's the same as with reports. So there's a folder.
Yeah.
Yes, but the name. Why unfiled $public?
Because if you don't put it in a specific folder, it's called unfiled. And it's public because all users can access it.
Okay. I thought maybe there is, I don't know, a library or whatever in the early days which made this kind of expression, because I've never seen this name of a folder before. So yeah, maybe that comes from there.
Don't put special signs in file names, please.
No. No. And, we have an image here.
Yeah, so this is a static resource, so it's like compound.
Yeah.
You already resolved the...
Yeah, it's a compound, and so we can have different files, a zip file, text file, whatever. So these are kind of the categorization we have. Yeah. And now think about the following. I mean, it's important for you as a developer to know kind of these behaviors, because if you know how one behaves and someone is from the same category as another type, maybe it behaves the same way. And Salesforce has the same challenge because they build tooling. And if you build a tool, you don't want to reinvent the wheel over time. And we have this nice JSON file here. Would you like to quickly open that one? This is a snapshot from a registry file, and this is from the source deploy retrieve library from Salesforce. You can maybe increase a little bit the font size here. And this is actually describing the metadata types. And when you, for instance, look for custom label here, when you just search for that. So this says, okay, it has children. It has some other children here. And when you scroll down a little bit, there are also something like strategies. Okay, there is a default adapter. And it's very informative. If you do not understand how metadata behaves, this file could help you, because this file here is part of what was it part of?
The CLI, SFTX.
The CLI. So yeah, this is actually the main tool, and this is the CLI.
Yay!
I
love
like
it. Oh, it's so beautiful. Really.
What?
Oh, come on. You gotta love it.
This?
Yeah.
Come on. I mean, okay, to be honest, I also love it very much, because I'm an accidental CLI nerd. Accidental because I have never done any kind of server, administration where you log in through SSH to a server. So I started with a CLI properly with Salesforce DX, and I love it because when you're sometimes faster, you can script it, you can automate things. So if you get to know it, you see the benefit of that. And so you can do, because Peter Chidham, he's the director, or actually the boss of Philippe, so he said, if you can write a Salesforce formula, and I guess every one of you has maybe written a formula in Salesforce, you can use a CLI. And that's why we'd like to show you quickly some stuff, because the benefit of a CLI is it's a standard industry thing. And so we're talking about metadata on our local file system. It's just text files. And whatever you can do with a text file, you can do programmatically with a CLI. And there is a lot of things that you maybe haven't thought about what you could do by just utilizing these two things. And so, Matthias, yeah, it's yours.
Yeah, so it might be a little bit nerdy, but I just want to say
that's why we're here.
Use the tools you like, you are known to. So let's consider our example here. We have some sample records, which is like the Salesforce offices around the world, and we just want to have a list view for Salesforce offices in the Netherlands. So I can clone the list view and say, and now I can add a filter to filter the yes, thank you. To filter the billing country to the two-letter country code NL in this example. Okay, so we have one office in Amsterdam right here. So that's good. So we have 249 countries in the world. So let's just create a list view for all of those countries. So what I do is I just get the list of country codes from Wikipedia, copy it, and I put them in a text file, save them. Sorry. And now...
Maybe you should remove NL because we have it already.
Yeah, let's do this later on. So first I want to...
Okay.
But
never get someone who's focused on development
Please
interrupted.
Remind me.
And with people watching you.
So let's first retrieve our newly created list view. And this time I'm using the Salesforce CLI.
You can move it up a little bit maybe.
Oh, yes.
Then it's maybe better. Yes.
Like this. So I'm using SFTX, force source retrieve, and specifying the full name, like the API name of this list view. List.
This is the beauty of the CLI.
Count.nl customers it was. So let's just retrieve that. And now, because this is a file, I can basically copy that file and replace NL with DE for Germany or whatever. And I do want to show this, how this works with a CLI tool called SED, Stream Editor. So I can say SED and add an expression, search and replace, like search for NL and replace it with DE, all occurrences in that file, and I'm using this input
This
file.
small expression is called regex.
Copy relative path. Well, git bash on Windows will bring you like those standard Unix tools. So yes, you can.
We will talk about that later on.
Yeah.
Why
Okay.
should be using Unix standard tools as a Windows user?
Let's make that a bit bigger. So it will print on the terminal like the replaced content of the file, DE, DE, and DE. So I can just pipe that into a new file, and to do that for all of my 249 countries, I create a script, a bash script.
But you can also do that in the Salesforce UI. You can just go there 200 times and create a new list view.
You can do that now, and we see each other later.
But again, it depends on who you have available. I don't have you available all the time.
You have my phone number?
That's why we want to give you inspiration.
So I'm just creating a simple loop over all the lines of that text file, and I have a variable called country code, and now I'm using this command I already created. And let's make that a little bit more readable. So, and now I'm redirecting the output to a new file. And in this case, I need the variable, country code, and I want to replace NL with, oops, also the country code. Okay, let's hope I didn't make any mistake and run this bash script. Oh, yeah.
Ta-da!
And I can see some brand new files. Thank you.
Can you deploy them all?
That's what we can use this Salesforce SFTX now. SFTX for source deploy, and now I'm using a folder path for SAP main default objects account. I can type so fast. And list views, and let's just deploy the whole folder. So I probably have 250. What happened? Oh, yes, I know, sorry. Now, you wanted to remind me.
Christian is busy creating 200 listings by now.
I did a small mistake. I now need to remove NL from my country because I'm overwriting the same file. So let's just rerun. No, it's working, yeah. Okay, deploy again. $250 because all of my country-specific list views plus the all list view, which I still have in my project. So I switch back to my browser, do some refresh, and I should be able to see.
Nice.
Yes.
And I mean, we are aware that maybe not everyone can write a bash script or SED by heart, but we want to give you some ideas that it's just text files on your local machine. And if you have to do a cleanup, a massive task, I don't know, for instance, we did a mistake and billing country is not the right one because that's not where we have all the data for. It's actually the shipping country, for instance. So you could just easily change this by using just text tools. And as I said, if you have someone who is familiar with tools like this, it would be way easier to maintain things. So it's just another way how you would approach challenges in the Salesforce world, because you can have metadata on your local machine and then use text files and work with that. With that saying, we jump back. Yeah. So when we do all these things like the CLI, it has to be connected, of course, to Salesforce. And yeah, obviously there's an API, which is called the Metadata API. And there is an interesting fact about.
Yeah, so right now we used retrieve and deploy, and both like in the UI or with right-click from VS Code and on the command line. This is the most commonly known flavor of the metadata API, like file-based calls. But there is more. There are CRUD-based calls, like create, update, create, read, update, delete, and there are even some utility calls.
But okay, I got it. Okay, so there is an informal API, but why should I care about that this API defines function I can call when I build a tool? Because all the tools are already built, like the Salesforce CLI. Okay, it connects to retrieve, deploy, as we have seen already. So why should I care that there are other flavors and other functions I can call?
Yeah, because the behavior is not exactly the same. So, for example, retrieve and read is similar, but not the same. And in some cases, you might want to use another API.
Some cases. Can you show one?
Yes, I can.
I have prepared something.
Profiles.
Oh, profiles. Here it is again.
So if I now want to retrieve a profile to do some edits in my text file, I can use SFDX force.
And not only edits, I mean, it's nice because when you have the profile on your local machine, multiple profiles maybe, you can easily, of course, search. For instance, do I have field level security for a certain field? Because you just make a text search over all your profiles and see where the field level security is listed. Just for governance, for instance, if you want to get some insights about it. And so you may maybe think, what I did as well, so okay, that's cool, I know the command, you can just suck down the profile from your org, and ta-da, you have the full admin profile over there.
It's not.
Nope.
And actually, that's the default behavior. That's the documented behavior.
It's the documented behavior.
Yeah, it works. It works.
It's the documented behavior that you don't get everything when you retrieve the profile.
Yeah, you need to add context. You need to explicitly add the other metadata components you want to retrieve. For example, say custom.
Okay, so just to rephrase it, okay, that means when I want to retrieve the profile, I only get, say, of a subset, but I need to know if I want to see if this field here, my dummy Picklist field, if this is part of my profile, I have to explicitly name it, or in the context of my VS Code project, that I know that this is part of my profile. And now, of course, the question arises, how would I know all if I just not searching for a specific field? How would I know what I'm missing out here?
Yeah.
So that's the question. And what's the answer?
I don't know.
I don't know. We can use a different API flavor.
We can try.
We can try. So
yeah. So yeah, let's use the CRUD-based calls. And unfortunately, there is no command in SFDX as of now. But I've just created a plugin.
He has created a plugin for that.
And so just instead of retrieve, I say read. And this uses now the CRUD-based API. And let's see if that resolves some different things.
Oh,
yes,
tab set. We didn't have tab set before.
Yeah, so as you can see, it's like 8,000 lines. So there should be everything in it, including like standard application visibilities and so on. So it's a full profile.
Nice.
So how can we distinguish between what is a standard command and what is like from my plugin? There is a cool command called which. So I can just enter this command and I see that this is from a SFDX plugin source read, and comparing this to the official command for retrieve, I can see that this is from the official @Salesforce plugin source.
Okay, so just when you go back to the slides to summarize this. So we have different flavor of the metadata API, but all the tools like the Salesforce CLI is just using the file-based API, which is the common one that we know since ages. And deployment tool, right? So all these things, they are just always using the file-based calls. But there are use cases that it makes sense to go on these other things. And there are libraries out there, for instance, JS4s, which are a JavaScript node library that you can just utilize to connect to these APIs. And I think that's what you utilized in writing this plugin, right?
Yeah, so exactly. So there's a good documentation about writing a plugin, and you will basically have all things you need to get started really quickly.
So, message, we can extend the basic capabilities connecting with metadata to Salesforce by using the CLI. The Salesforce CLI can extend by plugins, and of course, there are some things which is, I mean, you have to know obviously about profiles. So
yeah, so that was what we showed, and we showed you that this is the expected behavior, and we have another API which behaves differently. But if you think that's it, you're wrong.
profiles.
If you use the same API call against like a scratch org or a
Source track.
sandbox with source tracking enabled, this behavior doesn't apply anymore. It's different. So, and that's what I have had a hard time finding out because I searched for documentation like for half a year and just recently found the docs. So,
So
happy to see this.
when you do the same retrieve against a developer org that we have seen, you need the context. If you do it against a source tracked org, you will get all the information which are tracked by source member. What that means only those source member which has been actively
so
changed.
it's not full.
And so it's kind of an intermediate state.
Yes.
You do not know is it full or half or what is it. So it's kind of a little bit strange. And this is really a trap that you can get into, especially for profiles. But you can use Matthias' plugin for getting better there. So here's a small comparison.
Yeah, so on the left-hand side,
That's the point about the print-based API. It's very limited.
it is, yeah. So, but you can use it for certain use cases. You shouldn't use it for a deployment.
Yes.
But yeah. So on the left-hand side, we have the file-based API. Everything is basically zipped, and you can deploy multiple types of metadata, and it's basically the largest deployment possible. And for the CRUD-based API, this is really like an API where you can basically, for one metadata type, process only 10 components. So that's not much. So you basically have to do some scripting to make that work for multiple components.
Utility calls, just mention it.
Yeah.
You can describe the metadata in your org. So you can say, okay, what metadata is available in my org? And you can inspect metadata, and you get a lot of meta information, like this is a list view, and I can see who has created that list view, when has it been modified, and by whom. And this is, for instance, think about governance, right? So I don't know, you fire your developer, and maybe he has done some bad things in the last days. He has access to Salesforce. How would you find out? So what you could do, we're talking about file on your local machine. And if you have files on your local machine, you always use a Git repository because this is the industry standard. And if you have it in a Git repository, you can see, of course, what has changed over time. And because you can automate all these things, you could, for instance, just say, okay, every morning I run a script, get everything into Git and back up it, just in case that I have to review what has changed over time. And with this utility calls, you get governance, for instance, who has changed and modified what metadata kind. This is just one way. There are different ways, of course, but just say it's text files, what you can do with text files. And
yeah, so the case which you mentioned, like if we want to basically retrieve all the metadata to just create a backup.
A backup of my org.
Backup of all metadata. So luckily there is a new command recently added, sftx force source manifest create, which can create a package XML for us with a parameter called from org, and I have to specify the name of my org, playground.
Okay, so what this is creates a manifest. So package XML is the one thing we know for years, so which is described the metadata which is available, so the metadata components. And
it is using these utility calls to list the metadata components and creating a text XML file for us. So this is like what we have in our org.
This is your Salesforce org, ladies and gentlemen, right? So this is actually, as I said, this could be used for backing up. And of course, you can download, you can retrieve all the metadata with this package XML because this describes it. There was one question. Yeah. Just hold on for the mic.
Hi everyone. I just want to ask, so you showed like to retrieve profile with all metadata inside with your plugin, But when you have this package XML, which is you can create like easy in a second, you can
Yes.
retrieve your profile using package XML, and it will also have all in your
Yeah.
profile.
The package
You add
XML
the
is
con-
generated within seconds.
Yeah.
The retrieve of this metadata will
longer,
take a
yeah.
while.
So
So,
if you-
that means if you just want to retrieve the profile because you want to do something, you don't have to retrieve your full org because you can just describe it in a different way.
But
Yeah.
then you click like right click on your profile and you retrieve only profile, not all metadata. I'm talking about that one, you know? If you go to profile folder and right click on admin,
Yeah.
and then you click retrieve
Yeah.
source. And
But-
you will retrieve all, just
No, because it only works if you have the context in your project. So that means if you have the metadata already somewhere on your local machine, then it works because then it knows the context. But if you don't have and you just want to retrieve it, this is one way of doing it.
yeah, I thought it will also pick up from package XML and will retrieve for what in package XML. No.
Not in this case, I think.
Yeah, okay.
But if you use it with the scratch org, then it should retrieve like everything that is source tracked, so it might look like a full.
Okay, as I said, I mean, there are always cases. And as I said, it's not that we say this is the perfect solution, but sometimes it could be your lifesaver, it could help you about understanding what's happening. And just to give you an idea of where you could go next is, there are a lot of plugins already there. The community is awesome. Unfortunately, there's no official plugin space. So I don't know if you know a better source than we do. So when you go to Shane McLaughlin's repository, he has an awesome SFDX plugin. This is the most best place what I would look for. And there are a lot of plugins. So for instance, Fabion's plugin, which is awesome, and a lot of more. And every plugin, there are some general purpose plugins which have a lot of different functionality or a very specific one. But as I said, if you have a specific challenge, maybe someone has already written a plugin. And if not, of course, you need a developer for that. You can do so by using Node. And also, Salesforce has open sourced their CLI plugins. Yes, it's Shane. So these are the URL. Now go back to the overview.
URLs, yeah.
So when you go for Shane McLaughlin is his name, and he has a kind of a collection of these plugins. And as I said, if you want to know about how things are built, it's so appreciated that Salesforce also open source their CLI implementation. It's an ongoing process. You can see it here. Not all have been open sourced yet, but you can find, and the source retrieve deploy library I showed you before was this JSON file. This was just so insightful when you go through the repository because you see, okay, how Salesforce is challenging the metadata API. And, you know, just bear with Salesforce. I mean, it's XML, right? Why is it XML? I mean, no one uses XML anymore. But I mean, it's like 23 years old. And I guess when they started Salesforce developing, they have been heavily invested into Java. And I guess there was just a good XML parser in Java back to that years. And that's why the metadata XML is XML-based. And we heard it in the talk before, never change a running system. If Salesforce would change it, that has a huge impact. And so things are as they are. But as I said, we can make it to the better by the awesome community. And so we have one more thing to share, which is inactive picklist values.
Inactive picklist values, and why I appreciate that they showed some love for this UI. So I have a picklist value with values 1 to 7, and I deactivated 3 and 5. It went down, and on the bottom you can see that it's sorted alphabetically or alphanumerically.
We go down
so, and how would that look like in XML? Any idea?
I mean, there's a deactivated flag or active flag.
Yeah, so it looks exactly like in the UI. So 3 and 5 went down to the bottom, and is active was added.
Hold on. Here is an active flag, false. But what you're saying is the structure of the XML file changes, so the nodes which are there going over there, which is horrible for version control.
It is, yeah.
This is just horrible. Because there is a flag. I mean, if this would just change active, false, and true, I would expect this, but I would not expect this.
Yeah, and so one thing to know, like if you deploy this picklist, then inactive values will be deployed as well. So if you deploy from multiple orgs to like a staging org, you will basically collect all those inactive values in your staging orgs. And now if you want to compare like one staging org with another sandbox, you will basically compare apples with oranges, and you will see diffs all everywhere.
And that's why it's so nice that we have the GUI now,
Yes.
because they are adding some for admins or for developers, both sides, because you cannot delete Picklist values with metadata API. So that means you still have to use the GUI, and now we have a more sufficient GUI to clean up the inactive Picklist value. So please, when you deactivate a Picklist value, also delete the values. Really, if you have this use case, there is a reason why you should inactivate. But at the end, it could be that you mess up your data.
Yeah.
And we even tried to mess up the metadata API.
And we succeeded, I think. So we did a mix of deploying inactive values and deploying a Picklist value without values, so which is kind of deleting it, but it sets the values to inactive in the target org. And now we can see that it's not even sorted anymore on the bottom, so it's just weird. But the good thing is, in the XML representation, it's still sorted. So now our UI doesn't match
so
the
we
XML
crashed
anymore.
the UI by some metadata calls, right? So because this UI is always meant to be alphabetically sorted, and we have no clue how we did this. So it's really kind of some strange thing happened. And as I said, the XML is still in the right shape, which is strange because that means that the information in the XML is different than in the UI. Yes. How could that be? Okay, so far so good. As I said, there is a lot of things out there, and we could make talks of all of these topics here. When you go into metadata development, you go into CI/CD and all these things. I mean, it's a really good follow-up from what Caro and Sander presented before, because, yeah, sometimes you need a developer, sometimes you need to proceed with this, and then it's kind of, a rabbit hole. And so my personal takeaways is actually, I mean, metadata deployments are not so awesome sometimes. But please bear with Salesforce. As I said, it's kind of whoever has maintained 20-year-old code knows about that. And if you're a fast-growing company, there are a lot of teams. I mean, it's a challenge, definitely. But the good thing on my side is really we have an awesome Salesforce CLI. This was really a game changer when it was introduced along with Salesforce DX. I mean, there have been the Heroku CLI before, but this is really kind of helping us really. And they're doing weekly releases. So check the release notes. The command we just showed you, retrieve from org, create a package XML from org, has been released, I don't know, 4 weeks ago or so. It's not that old. So it's still ongoing. So we have an awesome Trailblazer community. That's you and some of the people sitting here which are actively contributing. So thank you very much for that. That really helps us in our day-by-day business if we all collaborate. And so, yeah, learn on the go. You cannot know all of these things. That's just too much. And so you have to think about it. But you need some basic understanding of this. And as I said, all what we showed you are maybe some picks here and there, but to enable you to think about, okay, we can use different tools, different way of thinking, how we would solve challenges in our day-by-day business.
Yeah, my takeaways are also about learning. Like everyone who customizes Salesforce should study the behavior, like what click means that to metadata, like, yeah, get a feeling for that. And if possible, use a scratch org to explore this behavior, because then you don't have all the noise of your business org. And yeah, kudos to the whole SFTX team, because I think it's going into a really good direction. I see really good progress on there. And yeah, last point, have mercy with those deployment tools, because it's really complicated to do deployments and deal with metadata.
Yes. Therefore, thank you very much. We had already some questions. Feel happy to talk with us. I think we're running out of time for more questions. We had some questions on the go, but
Fabian was the first one.
Fabian, maybe you had...
If you want.
So, say again?
Yeah, I just one question, but if it's out of time, I can ask you later.
Yes, yes. Thank you very much.
Sandro, do you want?